Nice music in the background.
Who's got beautiful background music? That's Christian Byfield. Good afternoon, everybody. We are live, and I'm joined by my wonderful guests, Christian the Viking Byfield and Mark Howlett of Propco. How you doing, boys?
Yeah, very well. Thank you, David. Hi, Christian. Good to see you both.
Mark, good to see you. Mincy, always a pleasure.
Always a pleasure. We're here to learn a little bit more because we touched on it previously when we broke the news of your tie-up and your integration. Christian, you've brought something to show us, right?
That's right. So, to be honest, the way a lot of our integration works, and we'll talk about this in more detail as we go on. But I mean, the clever thing about the integration that we've built with Propco is it really is a sort of end-to-end integration throughout the whole transaction process. So from the moment a tenancy transitions into a concluding status, all the way through to a deposit reconciliation. But a lot of what we do between the two products, between us and Propco, really happens behind the scenes. So we will talk through what those sort of key steps are. But the main thing really to show is we had to sort of reinvent our dashboard. So for agents that have seen our platform before, we basically created a new imported status that will work alongside our Propco integration. And yeah, it'd be great to quickly sort of show everyone what that's going to look like and some of the logic that we've built around some of our thoughts around importing data.
Well, that'll be great if we can sort of just reframe the debate, if we like, in terms that people, if they've been living under a rock and they don't know what the depository does and they don't know what Propco do. But we always ask our guests for some zingers, some facts, and you sent one in that the national average for deposit returns is currently 21 days. Depository clients are enjoying, on average, a return of 14 days. So it's substantially quicker. And really, Christian, you guys are still smashing it by being the only providers automating that end of tenancy process, aren't you?
Yeah, that's right. I mean, I think the easy sort of single sentence elevator pitch is we're like good Lord, but for an end of tenancy. So we look at all the steps around taking a tenancy from once notice has been given or received. We don't facilitate notice itself, but once an agent gives or receives notice, we then automate as much of the process going forwards. So guiding a tenant through preparing what they need to do in order to hand back a property, in order to minimize deductions and get their deposit back fast. We streamline the booking of checkouts, capturing of cleaning arrangements. We have inventory integrations, which can also auto capture dilapidations from a checkout and associated evidence. And within our platform, you can propose deductions to your landlord client if you want to and have them sign off, and then undertake negotiations with your tenants, and then go through to reconciliation instructions. So for a cash deposit on an insured scheme, for custodial, we would just agree dilapidations and send that instruction to TDS. For an insured scheme, we will capture how funds are reconciled between parties, including bank details and forwarding addresses, so that, yeah, literally everything is done. So like you said, we speed up return of deposits. You know, we've really approached this trying to give benefits to all sides of the triangle, the agent, the landlord, and the tenant. So yeah, but some of our key things we're looking to do, we're really trying to tackle some of the sort of the tenant issues that they face, which is slow deposit returns. So we've already, like as you've highlighted, we're a third faster than the national average, and our goal is to try and hit that 10-day mark that the government legislation sits around. We want to try and get our agents reconciling deposits within that 10-day time frame, which should almost eliminate potential disputes because it's inside of that time frame, and it also helps address affordability issues. But obviously for our agents, we're trying to streamline work. And so the big win for our agents is, you know, we did a lot of research before we started building this platform, and in our agency, we estimated it at sort of between 2 to 3 hours. Our research actually revealed that for the average agent in the UK, it's 3 to 4 hours work to do everything that we do. Our agents without a CRM integration like our Propco integration are probably averaging between 20 to 30 minutes now. And with our Propco integration, we estimate that our agents should be spending 10 to 15 minutes per tenancy conclusion versus 3 to 4 hours. So,
and you really want to cut down that part of the process, because famously, this is really where the property management has already come to an end. It's not a profitable zone for an agent to get stuck in, is it?
It's not profitable, but it's a key part of the process, but it's just a horrendous process, you know. And what we're trying to do as well is we're trying to sort of what's the word? We're trying to make the agent be perceived as more of an independent party that sits between the two, rather than the perception by so many tenants that the agent is somehow in cahoots with the landlord to rip the tenant off and steal deposit funds unjustly. And so we're trying to sort of move that conversation on. And again, you know, in the 2 years we've now been running, the feedback that we get from 90% of our tenants, of our clients' tenants using the platform, is they love it. They find it fairer, more transparent, faster. They feel like they're handled in a more professional manner, which is, you know, that's what we want. We want our tenants to feel treated fairly. And again, that reflects well on the agent.
So if one of your clients is also a client of Propco, you found a way to make this even more seamless. And obviously integration is a great buzzword, but really what we're talking about here is we are avoiding manual data entry, and we're avoiding perhaps duplication of data that can often lead to mistakes being copied over, rather than being absolutely seamless and flowing.
Yeah, I think now's probably a really good time for those who don't know Propco that well. I think now's a really good opportunity for Mark to sort of explain a little bit more who Propco are in the marketplace, because I think they're a much bigger player than a lot of people realise. So I'm gonna shut up for a little moment, which doesn't happen too often, and hand you over to Mark.
That doesn't happen at all on our webinars. Go on, Mark, take it away.
Thank you, gentlemen, and Christian. Yeah, I thank the sort of description there of the depository and how that works, and what actually some of the objectives of that are. Really do sort of couple into what we've always sought to accomplish as well in the lettings industry. For those that don't know about Propco, we're actually in our 25th year this year. So, and I've been here since day one. I'm a founder of Technology Blueprint, who are the builders of Propco. So it was a friend of mine from school, Stuart, who also is still a part of the business. And we developed this system that started off as a DOS system back in the late 90s into early 2000s. We made it into a Windows-based platform, and then into what it is today, which is obviously a web-based solution. But the essence of this, and I think there's some key words that come to the mind. Christian, you've already used them. Transparency. I think it is absolutely essential in this space. And having a platform like Propco, coupling in with other systems like the depository, it creates that visibility, that transparency for the end user. That's in this case for you, it's the tenants and or the landlords. But where Propco as a platform sits in the middle, that's handling masses of volumes of data, properties within our space, within our portfolio, if you like, within our client base. We enjoy customers like Countrywide Connells have been using the product since 2008. LRG, Leaders Romans Group, are a client. There are many others, but that equates to, just naming that, calling out those couple of brands, respected brands in the industry, that equates to massive volumes that exist.
Huge scale, really, isn't it?
And I think, you know, the way that the market has gone in the last 8-9 years, where companies are acquisitive, the ability to deal with volume and scale is absolutely critical. And that again leads into this sort of service provision that Christian put forward with the depository solution. Because if you've got a portfolio, 100,000 portfolio or more, and you're, you know, consuming hours doing a part of a process, that equates, if you convert that into money, that equates to an awful lot of money. So where you're trimming off minutes and tens of minutes here and there, that actually makes the process a lot more efficient, a lot more productive, great benefits to the end user, great benefits to the agency, and it just pushes the standards that we expect in this industry to another level. And we've got to keep doing that. We've just got to make sure that this industry continues to progress and grow and improve. And these integrations, this kind of relationship is aiding that experience.
Fantastic. Christian, I think you should show us what you got going on there.
Right, so let's have a look-see. Share screen. Great. I'm going to jump over here. Great. Can you guys see that dashboard that I brought up? Sorry, because I've had to hop away to the tab. Can you see that?
We can now, yeah.
Can now.
Brilliant. Fantastic. So this is largely, obviously, our platform can be completely white labeled. So this is currently in our depository branding, but obviously any agent using our platform can have the platform branded. And for agents that have multiple brands, we're able to facilitate a single account, but that operates across multiple brands and branding throughout that. So really, I just wanted to highlight this new imported status that we've developed to work alongside our Propco integration. So the way that we have built the integration to work with Propco is we've really looked at best standards. So what are the minimum amount of actions that we can create that facilitate our two platforms talking and progressing? So, right at the offset, there was that, do we create an export to depository button? Well, actually, no, because actually that would mean that's a specific action that users now have to undertake. So the element that triggers our initial integration, our initial data import from Propco, is very simply changing the tenancy status within Propco. So, when an agent gives or receives notice in Propco, they will ordinarily go into Propco and change the tenancy status to ending. And that change of status is what triggers the API to export the data into us. So an agent doesn't have to go and remember a specific action. Their staff will do what they've always done, is change a status into ending. And we call that API every 2 minutes. So within 2 minutes of them changing that tenancy status, we will now capture that tenancy and import it. And we will ideally capture the landlord, the property, the tenancy details, the tenancy records, the tenancy agreement, the check-in report, and the inventory, if all those things exist. But one of the things that we had to think about as well is completeness of data. So we've talked about a couple of things. One, there is a vast spectrum of scales of business. Typically, the larger the business, the more variety you can have in completeness of data. And when you're talking about the larger part of the market, particularly with acquisitions, again, that's even more so.
Yeah.
So one of the things we had to look at was, great, we want to be able to capture this instantly and without an agent having to do a new action. Great, we've ticked that box. But what happens if we capture a tenancy and a document's missing? Or we capture a tenancy and a tenant's email is missing? Like, how are we going to do that? Because we don't want a singular or a few missing data fields to prevent us capturing a tenancy coming in. So we've got a few examples in here. So I'm just going to open up. Let's try. Come on, let's do this one. So we come into this one, which has been imported, but straight away, because there's data missing, you've got this red flag at the top, and you can just expand that. And so here it shows exactly what data fields are missing for this to be a complete file. And rather than have to go into our application and pick out what's missing, everything's here. So for most agents, and I think most property manager admin agents will now work on a dual screen system. So they'll have their 2 computer screens, they'll have Propco open next to them, and they'll just be able to drag and drop across the missing field. So in this instance, the tenant's email and phone number. In fact, for both the tenants, that hasn't come through. And then for this one, it hasn't captured the tenancy agreement or the inventory and check-in report. And we've even got the logic to say, actually, the inventory and the check-in report are a single document. So you can click that and you just import one. but we make it really simple. So someone can just import those missing data fields, click add, and that's it. And then that tenancy is ready to pull through. We've got some other examples here. This one, TDS certificate wasn't complete. So because we have a TDS integration, which validates a deposit certificate, if that is not correct and it doesn't get validated by TDS at the point of import, again, that's flagged so that they can re-input that and it will instantly live check that again to make sure it's valid. Now, interesting, on this tenancy, all the documents have been captured. We're missing one tenant's email and the other tenant's email and phone number. So again, we've just streamlined it so that an agent can really easily see what's missing, fill out those fields, and then once they've done that, they'll come back to their start process screen with it ready to go. The way we work is that when we capture a tenancy from Propco, we capture the user within Propco. And as long as that user exists within the depository, it will assign the application in our platform to the same user that has been progressing that tenancy in Propco.
Right.
Now, that might need to be reassigned to someone else. That's fine. They can come in here and they can pick a different user from the system. They can take out the original signed one. They can designate who's responsible for proposing and negotiating deductions. They can toggle specific settings regarding the tenancy if they want, and on they go. And again, we've just brought, we've thought about that logic as well. So if we import a tenancy and the Propco user exists in our platform, then that tenancy will sit in that individual user's imported dashboard. I've actually got this sort of switched off to assign to me. So I'm seeing multiple users tenancies here. Where we capture a tenancy and we don't have a matching user record in depository, that tenancy will actually sit on every single user's imported dashboard. So everyone will be able to see, oh, hold on, this tenancy is assigned to this person, but they're not in it. And that is a red flag to either set up that user within our platform, or maybe that person that uses Propco doesn't do the process in depository. They can just simply reassign that to a user that does. So, being our first CRM integration, there was a lot of complexity for us because we had to think about all of these variables. What do we do? Like I said, if a user doesn't exist, if a user doesn't match, if we've got missing data fields, and it was a very detailed process. We anticipated this was going to be a 2 to 3 month process. It actually took us closer to 6 months to build this out with the complexity that we wanted. But we've now laid the foundations to, like I said, really cover every eventuality that we can think of when it comes to capturing data, streamlining that and bringing it into our system. And, as you highlighted earlier, that removes duplicated data entry, which obviously every agent hates. Now, we've worked hard on that because we knew we weren't going to get CRM integrations from day dot. And it only takes 2 to 3 minutes for a person to set up a record on our system manually from scratch. But there is also the risk of data error when you do that as well. So obviously, as long as your CRM data is sound, this streamlines that, removes a slightly boring task, and just streamlines it. So really, that I'm gonna stop sharing now because that is really all we can show you visually of how our integration works. That's the sexy sort of front end bit that we see. And then we've got a load of really, really clever stuff that keeps our platforms talking to each other throughout this journey, all the way through, like I said, the reconciliation.
So that process just there gives the agent an opportunity to do a bit of light housekeeping and making sure that all the data fields are there and all that stuff that might sound boring, but it's actually really important as far as the process is concerned. Net result, though, what then happens once that comes over? What are we then seeing getting?
So literally, once that file's ready, if there is any missing data, and that should be occasional rather than regular, once you've completed those, you literally just click start process, and that will start the process in our platform. So the first thing our platform will do is it will contact the tenants and it will say, these are the details that we have registered as your contact details on file. This is your email and contact number. Can you please confirm whether or not these are still accurate? Because one interesting thing we found when we started this journey 6 years ago, when we first started talking to TDS, a fascinating thing that we got back from them when we approached them was they turned around and said, actually, you guys can help us with a big problem. They were like, we get to a lot of tenancy conclusions only to discover that at least one of the tenants no longer lives in that property. They've changed and no one even knew that they've swapped to someone else. At least one tenant has got a different mobile number or a different email address because they've changed job or whatever it is. And they're like, that's a big problem for us. If we can't communicate with our tenants and we don't have the right tenant names, we can't do that. So the very first thing we do is we ask our tenants to do that. It's not critical. A tenant can ignore that request. It doesn't prevent our application doing the job. But I think about 2/3 of our tenants will either say, yep, these are accurate, or they will go, no, these changed, and they can input updated details into the system. So right from the get-go, we're making sure that data is clean and accurate and up to date.
Yeah.
And then from that, sorry, Mark, jump in.
I'd say that on the point of the data accuracy, data quality, incredibly important. And it's one of the things that I impress upon our Propco users all of the time, that having that correct information from the beginning and then maintained throughout the life of the data that exists in the platform is important, so that when it is being pushed and shared with external products like the depository, it's arriving in a really good form. And absolutely, the sense checking it and validating it in this case in the depository side is essential too. But hopefully, we, as you said, Christian, you would expect that to be an infrequent exercise versus a frequent exercise. But it is important then that the downstream that allows then the downstream conclusion of the process is done in a clean and concise way. I think that the advantages that come out of such integrations like this is we are ironing out the ripples of inefficiencies throughout the whole of a tenancy situation. This happens to be at the end of the tenancy and it's validation and going on there. But that all adds up to a greater benefit and a greater experience.
You can see one of the comments that have come in here from Ian Crampton. The ability for brilliant platforms such as the depository to integrate with CRMs is paramount, to which CRMs live or die, in my view. That's a strong view, but it's true. We've been crying out for years, haven't we, for CRMs to have more integrations. We've talked about open APIs and what they might be capable of doing, but in practice, it takes the two parties to get together and really sort of iron out this process to make it as seamless as possible. There's a lot of work that goes into it.
Sorry, Mark, you go.
It is an incredible amount of work, and I think the onset of APIs has really probably unlocked that opportunity in recent years. And having an understanding of what an API actually is there for, what it does, has freed up that kind of barrier to creating the connections, because whilst it takes time and effort and it costs money, it is actually through an API channel, it is actually representatively less expensive than creating programmed integrations, which are very costly and timely. I don't know, Christian, your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a lot of phrases that get bandied around in RNC, and particularly by agents, sort of around open APIs. I think there is a gross negligence around what an open API is.
Yes.
I did an article on this recently, and I think the perception of an open API works a lot like linking two apps, where you literally just get prompted to put in your username and magically two platforms talk to one another. That's not the case.
No.
And I'm going to say, obviously, Propco are a much more mature product than ours. They've already got a series of integrations. So on Propco's side of building the integration, there was actually only a few APIs that Propco had to deliver that didn't exist. Because we were touching data fields that hadn't been touched before. Obviously, our end, yes, we have an open API structure, but we haven't built a CRM integration. So this was by far, this is our 7th integration that we've built. We've got 2 TDS, we've got a utility supplier, and we've got 3 inventory integrations already in place, all of which have by and large been fairly simple. integrations to build, because there's only a few touch points, and there's primarily a single trigger sort of action that happens around. Building our first CRM one was a whole new experience, because like I said, there are various touch points throughout the whole process, and we've had to think about a lot of how do we tackle these variables. We already touched on missing details, a user alignment between Propco and ourselves, but we've also had to think about other things. So one of the things that we built with our integration is there is the potential for a tenancy that imports into our platform for an agent to need to either delete or archive it for whatever reason. Now, the most common reason for that is that a tenant either agrees in an extension or a complete renewal. And obviously at that point, whether that is moved 2 or 3 months down the line or a year down the line or more, we had to build. Now, we had the functionality in our platform to take it out, but building Propco, we had the Propco API, we had to think about, okay, but it's not that simple. Why are we coming out of it? So with our clients who have a Propco integration, a client who doesn't have it, when they click archive or delete, it will just do that and park it. When you have a Propco integration set up, when you go to delete or archive a tenancy, what it will ask you is 2 things. Do you want to be able to re-import this at a later date? Now, you might be taking it out because a landlord, and I'm glad to say this is very, very rare, but you might have a landlord or tenant who refuses to engage with a digital platform. It was always a concern for us rolling this out, but the numbers are tiny. I think we've had 3 in 2 years across about 8,000 tenancies. So it's tiny, thankfully, but the most common reason is a renewal. So what we've built is we built the logic so that an agent can say, in those unusual circumstances where landlord's like, I do not want to use this platform, I just want someone to call me, they can take a tenancy out of our platform and they can say, no, do not bring this back into the system again until a new tenancy comes in. But in an instance where it's been renewed or extended, they can go, yeah, recapture this in the future. So we'll park it, but we will still keep looking out for that change of tenancy status in the future. So 2-3 months down the line or a year down the line, when those tenants do decide to vacate, we can still recapture that tenancy and import it. In the instance, like as I highlighted, the rare ones with the landlord, what an agent can also do at that point is we've built a workflow trigger within Propco. So if an agent wants, they can build a deleted/archive depository tenancy workflow, which can be triggered by us automatically to say, look, this needs looking at to understand how this tenancy needs to be taken forward. Is it a landlord that refuses to engage with the platform? And is that why? Do we need to educate them, whatever? But again, we trigger that little workflow so that for those unusual circumstances, we're still automating it as much as we possibly can.
And likewise, when it all goes smoothly and we've got to the end of that tenancy return scenario, your system's automatically reading the deposit ledger and updating it all the way through back to Propco.
Yeah, so one of the great things Propco did was they expanded the data they could capture per individual tenant on a tenancy, because of the way that we capture like a joint tenancy details. In theory, a deposit could be reconciled to every tenant. So you could have, say, for example, 5 tenants on a tenancy with a deposit or portion of a deposit going back to every single party. The tenants will dictate that within our platform, how those funds are reconciled and split between all of them. And anyone who is owed money, we will then capture bank details. And if we're capturing bank details, and letting agents will like this one, in order to submit bank details, they have to give us a forwarding address.
Yeah.
Now, our forwarding address...
It's the simplest detail, but it's the cleverest bit of the system.
It's the most difficult piece of data for an agent to get hold of because tenants hate handing that over. However, they don't question it when they have to give it along with their bank details. And so importantly, what we do, we capture the amount, we capture the bank details, and we capture the forwarding addresses, and we export that direct into Propco. So now, on every Propco ledger, we've got that, they're owed this amount, here are their bank details, but we've also got that forwarding address. And now agents can start to look to use to leverage that data. They might want to now start looking into, where are they moving it to?
Yeah.
Is it one of our properties? Is it a patch we work in? Are we going to go and buy the land registry title for that to see if it's got a buy-to-let mortgage on it? Is that a property we now need to start targeting to potentially get on our books? But also, if they ever need to follow up with a tenant, they've got that elusive forwarding address to get there. But it is seamlessly all sat there without an agent having to think anything about it. And then at the moment that we send all that in, agents can also choose to trigger an accounts workflow within Propco. They don't actually necessarily need to. It depends how the agent wants to use it. Within our product, we can actually have accounts users. So our platform will prompt an agent's accounts user that a tenancy is ready for reconciliation. And they wouldn't do that within our platform like they normally would do. If they take that notice, they will then just go into Propco, reconcile the tenancy deposit like they should. And then we are constantly, again, every 2 minutes, we are reading that tenancy deposit ledger. So the moment we read that tenancy deposit ledger read 0, so they've actioned it, we know that that deposit's been reconciled. That triggers the refund action within our platform. So that triggers an email to tenants to say, today your deposit has been reconciled with the ledger. And it still says allow up to 5 days in case there are accounting procedures that mean that money isn't processed immediately, but it's in the pipeline, so to speak. And then we've also got a TDS integration. So the agent does nothing, we auto reconcile in our platform, but that also triggers our TDS API, which auto concludes the deposit registration certificate. So the agent doesn't need to tell our platform it's refunded. We already read that and tell the tenants, which creates a completion report, which is also sent into Propco for completeness of data. So that is a record of the entire transaction, who did what when, what deductions were agreed, for what, by who, and that PDF is sent and stored within Propco. It's still available in our system, but it's sat there should an agent ever need to refer back to it. It's right there where they want it. But another action they no longer need to do is they no longer need to go into TDS, into their account and say, this tenancy is now ended, you can end this protection. It will all happen without them lifting a finger.
Well, don't just take our word for it. Mitch Handley joins us. I can't explain how good the integrations are that we have with Propco and the Depositary. Two great platforms coming together for the good of the lettings industry. You've not just paid this guy 50 quid. This is genuine feedback.
This is so Mitch at Inventory Hive. I mean, this is another one of the great integrations that we've got, and I love the guys at Inventory Hive, and
likewise.
There's good reason they've had the praise they've had recently, and they won that big award at the EA Masters late last year. But yeah, our inventory partner integration is awesome as well. I mean, again, in terms of trying to get us to that goal of 10 days for our agents, our inventory integration is a huge part of that. Because if you think the workflow for most agents would be, an inventory clerk will attend a property, 2 or 3 days later, the agent will receive that checkout report. Typically, they'll then need to find time for a property manager to set aside time to review that 20, 30, 50 page document, pick out the issues and email their landlord. With our integration with Inventory Hive, it's amazing. So literally the moment they click complete report, and importantly with Inventory Hive, the agent gets to choose where that integration works, because there's 2 report statuses with Inventory Hive. I think there's like completed and then there's signed off. So if they want, if the agent has a process where they take their landlord through a double check, or they do a double check of a report before releasing it to third parties, they choose what that trigger is. But the moment that button is clicked to say, yeah, this report's completed or this report's been signed off, we instantly capture that inventory. We distribute it to the tenants and landlords on the agent's behalf according to their settings in our platform. We'll capture meter reading data, so reading, meter number, photo of the meter, and we can distribute that again, landlord, tenant, as need be. We've got one utility supplier integration set up as well, so partners using that, we send that instantly through to there, so that auto concludes bills without an agent doing anything. But the really exciting thing is we capture dilapidations. So property managers using our Inventory Hive integration don't even need to read a checkout report anymore. Anything that is assigned as tenant liability or where they're unsure who the liability is, we capture all of those issues and they sit in our deductions dashboard. So there might be 15 issues, everything from wall scuffs to overgrown gardens to a dirty oven. Within seconds of that checkout report being submitted, those 15 issues are sat in a dashboard for an agent to go, great, those 3 aren't really an issue, they're wear and tear. That one the landlord knew about and he's agreed to do that himself. But these, what am I left with? These 11 remaining issues, we're now going to assign a value, attach some quotes, and we'll get the landlord approval and then send those off to the tenant. And we've got, the photos of the inventory report, it's hyperlinked to the inventory report. We've got the point in the inventory report where that relates to. The agents can, if they want, reference the tenancy clause that relates to that particular issue itself. So we're removing days, we're removing data entry, but importantly, our agents using that integration never need to read a checkout report again.
Has anyone ever said to you, you almost have an unhealthy amount of passion for the end of the process? You make it sound very, you are very passionate about it. So you mentioned earlier that the average, and again, it differs depending on processes and who's handling it, but the average time taken was sort of 3 or 4 hours if they were efficient. On a good day, with the wind behind you, with Propco and the depository working seamlessly, what do you think you can get that down to?
10 minutes.
10 minutes, yeah.
10 minutes, wow.
10 minutes. Because we can, like I said, we can completely automate the booking of a checkout. We can present recommended cleaning details to a tenant, but the way our platform works is a tenant arranges what they want to arrange. They just have to tell us what they've put in place. And then again, we're just trying to remove anywhere where an agent has to do something, but they don't add value to it. So one of the things we do in the last 4 weeks leading up to the end of a tenancy is we have a weekly email go to tenants. So it's like 28 days left. Here's what you should do this week. And we do that each week in the last 4 weeks. Our agents can go in and customize those emails. So we've obviously, as agents ourselves, we pretty much know what that list looks like. So we've drafted up all these emails, but an agent can go in and customize that. I mean, again, that was a really important part of our process. So our platform has somewhere in the region of like 90 odd emails that we send to different users based on different journeys. And some of those are very like perfunctory. Some of those are just like a chaser email. You haven't performed this, please do it. But there are 8 emails that we strongly recommend when an agent signs up with us. They go in and customize. And so we've highlighted those 4. And we've got the introduction email to the landlord and tenant and the thank you very much, we're all done conclusion email to landlord and tenant. So those are the 8 emails that when an agent sets up with us, we recommend they go in and just review and make sure they align with their processes and their brand language. But if they really wanted to, an agent could go in and customize all 90 odd emails to have exactly what they want. And we recommend in the cleaning part, an agent always falls back on, as per your tenancy agreement, it says you have to do X, Y, Z, which is great. And that is absolutely the legal standpoint. The contract is what we all fall back on. But one of the things we recommend our agents do is in the cleaning section of our platform, an agent can create a standalone cleaning terms and conditions document. Now, some agents literally just copy and paste the cleaning clause from their contract and are like, here you go. Other agents go into more depth, so they might have that in there. They might have a specification list of what a professional clean or a professional standard clean includes. And then they will then set out the 3 options a tenant has. Use our recommended cleaners, choose your own cleaner, or clean it yourself. And they'll have a bit of a human explanation about the pros and cons in each of those. Now, that doesn't supplement, that doesn't replace what's in the contract, but at that stage in our process, that document gets sent to the tenant as a PDF attachment. When they go in and confirm whatever they've arranged, even if it's the fact that they're cleaning it themselves, they'll just go in and say self-clean. To submit that, they have to acknowledge the terms and conditions. And again, yes, we're reiterating what's in the contract, but it's about giving the tenant just that piece of information. They're not having to wade through a 30-page tenancy agreement to find that one tenancy clause about the clean. It's just there. It's a 1 or 2 page PDF document that hopefully is predominantly in plain English and just makes it really clear what a tenant's choices are, the pros and cons, and how they go about fulfilling that. And if they do that, then they can be ensured that they will get their deposit back quickly with as fewer deductions as possible.
So obviously you've had some love in the comments. You've had Ian Crampton and Mitch Handley has also been on there. But Mark, what's the sort of feedback that you're getting from your users who actually sort of got their teeth into this and started to use it?
Yeah, everybody's really excited about it. It's I think some of the the points that Christian's made here are very, there's synergies that exist between Propco and the depository. Things like the inventory hive as well, we do in a much the same kind of way, and there's actually that kind of thinking is very beneficial to all. But as far as the depository is concerned, I think the smoothness of the transaction and the gain that comes from that, people are receiving very well and are happy with it. I've got clients, as I mentioned earlier, that have big transactional volumes that they have to handle, and where you can trim away at the fairly standard processes that then relieve them of that burden, that just enables them to focus on the more trickier situations that arise, and that happens a lot. And I think with the way that the integration has taken place and the use of the APIs, it's being warmly welcomed by those that we've got already on it. Christian, would you agree?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, as Mark alluded to, we're working with one client of Propco. If you think the average person works roughly 2,000 hours in a year, potentially we're looking at saving one of Mark's clients in the region of 50,000 hours a year in admin time.
Just
Which is
quite substantial. And the interesting thing is in talking with that agent and establishing this, because it took a long time to do that journey and to get all the way through with Propco as well to facilitate that. There are other benefits. That is obviously the core benefit. That's the big sell. That's the big attraction.
Yeah.
But the things that they really liked was, they did a lot of training within their teams around trying to make sure that every member of staff followed this set process each time. But one of their frustrations was that, to quote one of their staff, one of their meetings, was they were like, every member of staff skips a step or gets something wrong at some point in time. And that can not cause any issues, but it can cause a really big issue. And what they liked about our system is our system can be largely customized to align pretty much exactly with how an agent wants to operate, or already does operate. We can get very, very close, if not exactly. But what they liked was the fact that we now stipulate that. I alluded to those 4 emails that go out. They go out every time. So they know that's been sent out. They know the tenant's been well informed on what they need to do. That cleaning email with the terms and conditions, they know that's gone out to the tenant. So they know that the tenant has been provided that. And it's not lost in this massive 10-page document, or it's not lost in a 30-page email. The fact that we capture bank details and forwarding addresses, they currently do that manually on a paper document. They post that out to their tenants write that document and post it back to them, and it then gets scanned and input or manually data input into the system. So you can appreciate the risk of documents flying around with bank details and forwarding addresses on.
I know this only too well. When my staff used to complain, if there was a bit of the process that had not been followed properly, it was usually because David Mintz has had his fingers on it. We're trying to cut corners, but in this way, if you have a system like this, it sort of idiot proofs it, doesn't it? It makes those processes completely uniform, and it takes away that kind of human ability to mess it up.
Yeah.
It will make it flow a lot better.
I've said for years, if an agent doesn't add value, you have to really break down, and a lot of agents do this because there's too much minutia. But if you break down every process an agent does, whether you're a lettings or sales, you break that down into the key elements of delivering that, and then each element you break it down into the tiny actions that are undertaken to complete each of those steps. If you actually look at that list and look at where an agent adds value, There's very few. But actually, those are the only times, in my opinion, those are the only times a human agent should be involved. Because if an agent doesn't add value, all they do is add risk. Because all they do is they just risk screwing it up. But just doesn't matter if they're the best employee ever with photographic memory and everything, they are going to mess up at some point. They're gonna have an off day and press a wrong key or something.
And that's where good tech comes in. It doesn't need to be overly complicated sometimes. It just needs to take away that element of human error, and make sure that every process is followed and we don't cut corners and that we get the right information. Like I said to you, my favorite part of this, and I've heard this a few times now, and I smile every single time you say it, but that whole ability to just capture their forwarding address as you're getting their bank details for that return. You're right, psychologically, that's the right time to make that ask, isn't it? Because if you were to separate that, you're not going to get the same result.
And look, there are you can succeed at things on an application that you can't succeed with via email or telephone. And there's one thing we know, right? And I said this when we were building Depositary. You could have like I said, our platform aligns with an agent's process that they do manually. So actually, most of our agents who use our platform currently aren't actually doing anything any different. The only difference is that tenant is being pulled through that the steps that a property goes through, a tenancy goes through, and a tenant is pulled through are largely the same. The difference is whether they're being pulled through it by an email or a phone call or through our platform. And the fascinating psychology is when a tenant gets an email or a phone call, there's that suspicion that they're somehow being treated differently to someone else. Oh, my last agent didn't ask me to do that. So why are you asking me to do that? And you're like, well, the last agent should have asked you to do this, But interestingly, you ask that tenant exactly the same question in the format of an app. And it's like, oh, I have to fill this out to go to the next step.
Because we've been trained, haven't we?
Yeah. Just accept it. And that's the fascinating thing. And that's where, you design tech well. But, interesting, a tenant can input a forwarding address with us right from the start of the process. They don't. I mean, largely because quite a lot of them don't know where they're moving to yet. That's the reality of the matter. But throughout the whole journey, they could put that in. But yet, we have not had a single email to date where a tenant's got to the refund stage and gone, I categorically don't want to give you a forwarding address. I refuse to give you a forwarding address to submit bank details. We've not had it happen once. We have had a couple of agents go, oh, how do you know that forwarding address is valid? Well, we don't. That forwarding address could be anywhere. That could still be the address the tenant's moving out of. It could be a work address. It could be their parents. It could be. It can't be a physical
address. It might affect their payment.
But the tenant's given it, so it doesn't matter. The point is they've said that's their forwarding address. So if for any reason an agent needs to get in contact with the tenant because a payment bounces, maybe the tenant typed in their bank details wrong and a payment comes back, legally. An agent is allowed to communicate with the tenant's forwarding address. If a tenant has falsely put in a false forwarding address and an agent's communicating with that, well, that's the tenant's fault. They've submitted that. But importantly, we're not seeing that friction, and that's the nice thing. We get to experiment with these things, and this is the nice thing. We have our agents come to us with problems now, and they'll go, oh, around this bit, we sometimes have this problem, and we can't promise to fix it straight away, but we will go away and think about it. We will go away and see if there is a way we can nudge it. And sometimes it might be something that's already on our roadmap for down the line. We can't, unfortunately, build everything at once. We don't have bottomless pockets. We're completely self-funded, so we don't have a big venture capital fund sitting behind us, and we are a startup. So slowly catch your monkey, as they say. But no, that's the exciting thing now.
But it's a great example, isn't it? This is prop tech working at its best. It's you're being as nimble as you can be, and your ability as a small prop tech company to look at these things and consider them is paramount, and that is key. And these integrations here with Propco can only add value to both your customer bases And hopefully the bottom line to all of this is the end beneficiaries are not only just the agents that are using your systems, but it ends up with a higher level of customer service for both landlord and tenant. And that is good for the industry. And if it's good for the industry, it's good with Mincy and it's good with Kerfuffle. So I must applaud you, gentlemen. It's always a pleasure to learn about these things and to see how well it's going. So thank you very much for coming on and talking about it today.
No, thanks for having us, Mincy, and thanks for letting us sort of deep dive into a bit more about what we've built, because it really is, it's you know, it's boring, but it's exciting. If you don't work in lettings admin, this will all wash over your head. But I think any experienced lettings sort of property manager, administrator, manager watching this, if this isn't getting them excited, they're probably working in the wrong industry. Yeah.
Thank you very much. Wish you all a good week, and we'll catch up with you again both soon.
Thank you
Cheers,
so much.
Mincy. Thanks
Thank
a lot.
you. Bye. Bye.